Alright everyone, welcome along to another episode of Martin's World. Guys, before I get into introducing today's guest, just to remind you that if you want to support the show, support the fight for cannabis legalisation in Ireland, you can sign up to the patreon.com/Martin's World, or you can also make donations in the form of Bitcoin through the link found on martinsworld.ie. So guys, today's guest, or just to remind you guys, all of the funds there will be used to set up and establish a cannabis activist hub here in Cork City. So on with the guest then. Today's guest is John O Regan. John O Regan has been a guest before on the podcast. He was a man who's tried to start up a cannabis political party in Ireland, Ireland's Cannabis Party, but sadly that hasn't come into fruition, but it has evolved into the Cannabis Activist Alliance. So John comes to join me today to tell me a little bit about that, but also about the fact that he's gotten another couple of court summonses because of cannabis charges. Two of those are 6 raids in total, coming from 6 cases in total coming from 2 raids. So John is going to tell us a little bit about that in the coming interview. So guys, sit back, roll them up, get blazed, and enjoy. John O Regan, welcome along to another interview on Martin's World. It's a pleasure to have you on as the second time guest, actually, I believe. So it is great to catch up. Why I wanted to catch up? What's that?
I said back by popular request, obviously.
Back by popular request. Actually, that's true. You definitely topped a viewership kind of count there within a certain time frame. Like normally I'd be watching the views and letting out a podcast. And I think I got like over 1,000 views on your own podcast within like 48 hours or something, or for 24 hours maybe of releasing it. So it was really good. It was good to see that. And that was just on YouTube. There was another couple of hundred over on Spotify and things like that. So it was certainly well received. I think maybe the title of it, like Irish Cannabis Hunger Strike, or I believe it was something along the rings of at that time. But since our last encounter where we were above in Ennis Court, and that video is up online for people to kind of go back and watch if they haven't seen it already. But we were there because you were up in court for personal cannabis possession and cultivation of cannabis, and that case got you got a €700 fine, I believe. Tell me again what you got in that case.
I'd forgotten until you mentioned it.
Did you pay it?
Don't say, well, yeah, of course I did. Yeah, sure. There's no need to send me another letter. I mean, I don't want to be tempting fate, you know what I mean? As I said, it wasn't until I was actually in court on that day, and I was in the witness box, and the judge turned around and he said, sure, you're comfortable enough there. And I turned around and said, I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. I mean, he didn't know that I was possibly going on a hunger strike if I was going to prison. And the Garda who was prosecuting knew, and I mean, I didn't want to say anything because I thought it was unfair to. You can't blackmail the court. You can't just say send you to prison and you're that's a death sentence, judge. You know what I mean? I don't think that's appropriate. Well, I might change my mind, but at the same time, at that stage, I didn't think it was appropriate to be trying to force the court. I thought they should be able to come up with a good decision as they could. And but anyway, as I said, I think I got €750 fine for and another 200 or something, or I can't remember, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, I thought it might have been 500 for the cultivation and 200 for the possession or something, wasn't it? Something along those, or 250 for the possession.
You remember better than I can,
yeah, something along those lines. I can remember chatting about it anyway. But you got 2 convictions then as well, along with that cultivation and possession too, with those fines. So since then, you've received not 1, but like 6 more charges for possession and cultivation of cannabis, and also psilocybin mushrooms, yeah?
There was a search about 3 years ago when I had about 5 or 6 mushrooms that I found, and I was going to leave them until I go up for another. Next day I'd go out and I'd find a few more. And but I didn't, so I just left the 5 mushrooms sitting in this tiny little bag, you know what I mean, that I'd left in a drawer, and they found it, and that's mushroom. That was psilocybin. So on the 23rd of February, I'll be up for that search 3 years ago. There's psilocybin, cultivation, possession, and they're charging me dealing again, even though I mean they just I think they charge him for dealing regardless, if you do what I do and you just don't speak to them, you don't answer anything, you just say silent, and that's
Yeah.
it, and respectfully silent. You don't just go silent. I don't make a joke of it or anything.
And how many plants was it that they caught you at that
I
time?
don't. A foggiest. I was thinking at one stage of writing in a freedom of information request to the guards to find out all of the times that I was searched, so that I know what it's about. Because I'm not joking here. The charge coming up this February, I'm not sure which search it refers to. I mean, I've been searched so many times. I thought I'd been searched a lot. I thought I was one of these. I mean, I subsequently found out that there was a guy in Killarney who was on a Zoom meeting with, and he was nearly laughing when he heard me complaining about my 6 arrests, and he said he's about 46 arrests that he's had. So like, so I'll have those 4 charges relating to that arrest in our search in 2018, and on the same day, then there's another charge coming in from another search, and they're charging me. I think it's deal. I have it up there. I can check it out some other time. But like, they're charging me with dealing. I mean, I'm people out there that have never been charged might find this a bit odd, like, but I mean, when you've been searched so many bloody times and have so many different charges up against you, trying to keep it all straight in your mind. I mean, sometimes you think, oh, should they search me? They're gone. That's all forgotten about, and you kind of forget about it. It's yourself, like, so. Like,
you just want to forget about it, really, isn't it? Like, it's something you don't actively want to remember.
I mean, it actually would be mentally bad for your health to be having. I mean, if you were to go around this information in your brain the whole time, I've got to be worried about this, I've got to get that prepared. It's no way to live, like, to have to.
No,
I mean, to have the police as a permanent fixture in your life. I mean, it's like, Jesus Christ. I mean, there have been more Gardaí in my flat than friends. There's more Gardaí have been inside my flat than any amount of people I've met since in the 5 years I've moved to Kilkee. I mean, there must have been 20, 25 Gardaí at least. I mean, more at this stage that have been through my place, searched my flat.
And when was the last time they actually paid you a visit?
Jesus, was it last? I don't know. I'm not certain.
You're not certain. So could you potentially have more cases coming after these 6 that you've just forgotten about?
That's why I was going to put in freedom of information request into the Gardaí to find out. But you can't put in you can put in a freedom of information request to the guards for certain things, and finding out details of cases, and how many times your pulse has been activated, how many times you've been looked up. I don't think that information is readily available to the public. I know it might be. I don't know. I'm only saying something that might be true now. I mean,
as I think you can definitely get the information they hold on the pulse system about you, as long as it's like, I don't know what it is maybe it's like an active investigation or something. But I definitely think you can request what information that they're holding about you in their systems. So it's certainly something to be looked into, for sure. But maybe if the case hasn't been to court or something and it's not finished, maybe they can't. I'm not too sure. Like that all flies over my head. I know nothing about the freedom.
I'm thinking of actually this time going for solicitor and asking him to explain to me, if he can find out all of this stuff. Like, and another good handy thing having a solicitor would be that I'd be able to give him a bunch of, let's say, ask him to contact people like yourself and say, listen, John has been has after getting 6 months and he's on hunger strike. Day 1 starts, he's on it right now, what I mean? So, I mean, whereas if I've no solicitor, I get straight from the courtroom into the back of a van and I'm gone and nobody has a clue. They just don't see posts for a couple of weeks and go, Jesus, what happened to John? I don't know. I mean, but so, I mean, a solicitor would be handy to have there to say, I've got a few letters for you that I want you to hang on to, give them back to me if I don't get sent off to prison. So that would be handy to have a sister there for that. Like, so I don't know.
And would you qualify for free legal aid yourself?
Well, I get the free legal aid. I mean, once you go into court and you get once you plead, at some point when you're pleading guilty or not guilty, the judge will ask you, do you have any representation? And we say no, then do you want representation? And
well, I believe he asked you that before you even enter a plea. He asked you that question. At least I've been asked before I entered a plea. I would kind of stand up, here I am, and he would say, oh, where's your solicitor? Do you want a solicitor appointed to you? And then that's kind of how it would go away before you would get to the plea part of the court case. So yeah, it would be worthwhile figuring out who the solicitor is in the local court. That would be most favourable to approach. That would be.
Well,
Yeah.
it's pure pot luck. I mean, it's just who's in court in court on that day that you pick up. If there's,
But down
it
in
doesn't
Cork,
matter.
we've old Frankie Buttimer. You can give him a phone call, and you'll be sure when he shows up in court that he'll get free legal aid for you.
But yeah, well, if, it's like it's all the same all over the world. If you've got a lot of money, you
Yeah.
can.
But did you not have
But
any
no,
known, like, well-known solicitor up there in where are you up in, by Ennis again? Is that like, is
yeah,
there no Frank Buttimer of Ennis?
not that I've seen. I've
Yeah.
seen no. I've been in court now.
Who's the local that represents all the young fellas going up for drugs possession and dealing? Like, surely there's some well-known solicitor. There's not.
I don't think there's no popular kind of person which everybody kind of wants to get that I know of.
Yeah.
It's generally, you know, there's none of them that would be particularly knowledgeable or interested that I can tell. You know, it's the same. I get the exact same every single time I've asked for a solicitor and got one. They give me the exact same advice: plead guilty, and then I'll put forward your circumstances.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what how Frankie Buttimer does as well. He time is money, and he wants you in and out of that office. Just tell him you're guilty, and that's all he wants to know about your personal drug possession charges. Now I'm speaking about, because that's the only time I've ever had to deal with him. But there was even a funny that he had a meme going around about him because he's so well known, and it's like, Your Honor, my client may be a scumbag, he may be a liar, he may be a thief, but he's a good man. You know, that's like the mean. It's like, oh, very good, like, because he's a top class man. Like, he loves the free legal aid. Sorry, I shouldn't be picking on him too much. Actually, I'm fucking giving him a harsh time.
I mean, you can find the most dirtiest, horriblest person in the world just good in them, and even in the nicest, most kindest person in the world just bad in them. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's right. Yeah,
we're all mix of the two, and you know, I mean, we try to guide ourselves to not to take advantage and not be the bastards we can be. I mean,
can I ask, John, how do you feel about the upcoming dates in court? So your first is in February, and then you have a second in April. How are you feeling? Are you worried at all?
Well, as I think you probably gathered so far, I'm not exactly laser focused on it. I'm not thinking about it that often. I mean, I just do a small bit now and again. Like I sent off an email a couple of days ago to ask for Judge Durkin his address, his postal address or email address. I would prefer the email because I have to get a letter printed out now or handwrite it or something like that. But I have a few ideas for things I'd like to write to him about. For instance, I was very interested in reading about the basis for finding out what's the basis for the war on drugs. And I found this 1955 WHO report, which came out 6 years. I mean, it's one of the fundamental documents for the war on drugs. It's built on this thing, and it's excrementally ridiculous. It is incredible. The stuff that was put forward as scientific opinion in 1955 that underpins the 1961 UN Convention is the greatest load of bollocks ever. They talk about cannabis leading to murder. I mean, if you read that document and you took it seriously in 1956, 57, 1961 UN General Convention, you would have said, well, Jesus, we have to outlaw cannabis because look what it does. In Egypt, there's people being murdered. There's people just because they get the munchies, you know, because they were so hungry after eating cannabis that they'd murder somebody to get food, you know. It was presented in a way. So, I mean, I'm thinking of writing to the judge and saying to him and coming. I don't know. I'm thinking about all kinds of things, and I'll eventually settle on something.
Yeah.
I can go maybe I should go the purely legal route and try to write as legalistic a letter as possible. And a legalistic letter could go along for 10 pages. Like, I mean, if it's, you know, I mean, so
have you
or to write.
Oh, sorry, go on, John.
Well, the other. I mean, that's one thing I can do, and then I can go on the more humanistic point of view. You know, that it's you know, that this is a human right that's being turned on its head, like, and we have to ask permission.
Legal kind of argument you'll be framing there, really, that they're violating your human rights, which is kind of a law. Your argument legally,
but even common sense. I mean, it is absolutely crazy. I mean, every guard knows that if he's coming across raiding a house when all the people inside are smoking cannabis, he'll have no big deal. It'll be
it's easy.
If he's going into a house where they're all liquored up to the gills, Jesus, you want to be damn careful. You look at somebody the wrong way, and bang, you next thing
They'd
this.
want a team like almost a riot squad to be going into that kind of a premises. Like,
Well,
yeah,
obviously
while
they
it'd be
don't
nearly the
do regular
opposite.
house parties, like. But I
Yeah,
mean, if they're going in where there's a lot of liquor involved, it's if they, I
yeah,
mean, they know themselves. If they meet 4 or 5 lads smoking a joint, or they meet a bunch of lads drinking beer, there's a different level of risk involved and the Guardian know this. I
hmm,
mean, and so common sense will tell you
big
that.
time.
I mean, that cannabis is not that dangerous,
Yeah.
and so.
And
But
come here,
they,
can I ask on kind of the points of what you could do? You're aware of Guy Coxell. I see your friends from there earlier. I asked you to get in touch with him for me, but you've seen the argument that he put forward. He asked 3 kind of simple questions before his court case started. One of them being like the justification for the Misuse of Drugs Act in the UK, and he wasn't able to be furnished with any answers. So the court case was kind of dismissed until I think he's to go back again at a later date. I don't think he's won that case just yet, but it's interesting. He's challenged him on something similar to what you're saying here, like the evidence he used for justifying that making cannabis illegal, putting prohibition in place. What is it? What is the justification? What is the evidence used? And he asked the court to provide that evidence, and they were unable to do so. So the court case didn't go ahead on kind of that point of law, really, like the justification
make a
around
note of
the
that.
law. Say that again.
It's an interesting idea. The only thing is that you need to be aware that courts, they live and die. Their bread and butter is a system. It's not like a judge can go and say, this is the way I want to do things. All right, I don't care what the judge does down the road. This is the way I'm going to. Judges have a there's a procedure that my internet connection is unstable. Hold on a second. It goes the way here. There's a procedure. So if there's a procedure in British courts whereby you can bring up this point, then you can validly bring it up and the judge has to listen to it, then it worked for Guy Coxall. I don't know of any similar, the only possibility that I've heard that might be a possibility is that you could ask the judge that he refuse jurisdiction in the case, that the case is for, again, you have to have it well thought out. What's the reason for him refusing jurisdiction? I don't know. Because I've heard that in every court case, the first thing that happens is he asks the judge for does he accept jurisdiction in the case?
That's right, yeah.
And once or twice I've seen the judge look over at me, kind of look out the corner of his eye, and look back. I mean, he's not going to tell me how to behave in court. What to say, when to say it. I mean,
but
you're representing yourself.
Yeah. I always thought that part of jurisdiction was to accept whether it was for his court to decide the outcome of your case. Like in certain cases, the value of the drugs seized might need for your case to be seen at a higher court. And at that point, then the judge will say, look, I refuse to accept jurisdiction. I'm going to assign this actually to the circuit court rather than the district court. I'm not too sure. Like what you're saying is that he could just refuse jurisdiction on it and leave it for an
don't know.
to decide, or because I think they can only refuse to send it upwards if that's what your outcome is. You're hoping.
I think you're right there.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
I could be wrong now as well. I don't really know the law.
Well, yeah. Here we are, 2 guys talking legal issues, and neither of them a lawyer.
Yeah. My only experience is like at the end of the law.
Well, it's been going on for all over the world for the last 60 years. Like the people like ourselves that don't know the law. I mean, I saw this great video one time of a guy in New York. He, a big black guy, and he had his phone out. And he was videoing the police doing what they were doing, and the police came over to him. They wanted his video. They wanted his phone. And he said he wouldn't give it to them. And then he started walking away, and they started walking after him. And he said, "Am I free to go?" And they said, "Well, if I'm not free to go, then what am I being arrested for?" He had all the jargon. He knew exactly what to say to them. And I mean, if it was you or me with those cops around us, they were looking for our phone. Eventually, they'd have got it. I mean, they'd have.
Well, the guards in Ireland, like as soon as you say no, they're going to use force on you nearly. That's at least that's my experience with them.
I was spear tackled onto the ground. I me neck like that bent onto the ground, and I was complaining to GSOC about this way of being treated, and I was resisting arrest. Sorry, lad. You were resisting arrest. So I mean,
Like
there was a guy actually saw the whole thing. He was and he up the road, and he was bursting his arse laughing. I mean, he was like,
yeah.
"Yeah, this is a joke." Like, I went up to him the next day then, and he was, oh, geez, he was head was down like this. He didn't want to know who I was, and he was, and I said, "You saw what happened? You saw?" And he, oh, I mean,
Well,
it's the other side.
I've seen you in
There's a side to this
person.
whole.
I've been with you in person though. Like I wouldn't give you more than, I don't know, say 70 kilos thereabouts. Like that, it wouldn't be too hard for a guard to pick you up and do
I really
damage to
am
you like
very
that.
careful.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's barbaric, really, that they could do such a thing. Like,
Well, there's. I mean, people don't. Most people wouldn't realize this, but there are some Gardaí that are. They're not all there. You know, I mean, I know
yeah,
they're not
yeah,
all
no,
there.
I'd agree with you.
In their, I mean, this guy was actually, he was trying to put his pressure points on me to hurt me, to get me to cooperate, and he wasn't, whatever way he
Yeah, but were you
was
actually
doing it, he wasn't able
resisting?
to. I was no, well, no, I was just standing there. I mean, I
Yeah,
refused
that's
to
what I was
go to the
thinking. Like,
car. He then said go to the car, and I just stood there. I mean, I thought they had to actually. There's a technique that they use in America where they call it go limp. You know, they have
yeah,
to then carry you. It takes 2 or 3 of them to actually get you over there. It's
yeah,
not
that's
just,
right. Yeah,
oh, take you by the shoulder like a schoolboy or something. Like they have to. So I just stood there, and because I stood there and didn't take his direction to the car, he then had his hands in him. I mean, it was kind of
yeah.
closest to being touched up that I've had in a long time. Very unpleasant.
You
Like,
drop a guy
and I
on
mean,
his
he was
head, like
actually.
you're liable to kill him. That's like almost attempted murder. Like it's definitely
Well,
excessive force when in terms of resisting arrest. What the man
I
wouldn't follow my
mean,
order to walk.
when he eventually got me into the car, like, and handcuffed behind there, I mean, I was fucking raging. Got back to the cop shop, and there was one, two, three. There was at least five. One, two, three, yeah, at least five, and then a sixth popped in at one stage, interviewing me inside the station. And what do they find? A bag of rubbish. It's illegal. You're not supposed to do it. There's I had a bag of rubbish, and I was going, a small little plastic bag. I was going to put into one of the rubbish bins, you know, one of the
Yeah.
public rubbish bins, and they
Oh, what a
so. I mean,
crime.
that's all they had, a bag of rubbish. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they were
They probably
searching me for,
thought you
they
had a
were
big
going
bag
through
of
the drugs.
mushrooms.
In, and there was five. There was actually one guy came on one stage and said, "Listen, lads," but I mean, the guy that arrested me said, "But sure, he looked at me the way he looked at me like there was something. He was doing something."
Yeah.
And he said, "Man, there was a guy that arrested me previously said the reason he looks like that is because you keep arresting him. You keep arresting him. That's why he looks like that. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
which is true. Like, I mean, the time I got arrested there, a couple of days after Christmas, before last, I saw her coming down the road and I said, "Oh, Jesus Christ, no, not the fucking cops again. It's
Yeah.
Christmas week, fuck off." And of course, they just, they don't know what's going on away. They just see a guy who's obviously very obsessed to
We're
be
seeing
seeing
him. Yeah.
Gardaí. So they think they just assume I've got something. Like, so I mean, out the car into the bloody station again. I mean, arrested 3 days after Christmas Day. That's got to be for being in a good mood, you know. I mean, for just being in a kind of, I was
Yeah.
in great form until I saw the cops going on the road, you know. I mean, 3 days after Christmas Day is the one day in the entire year when I go over do my shopping in Kilrush where I don't have to collect my dough like a normal person. I can just go on the bus and walk around. I don't
And
have to
have you
be
been up for
signed
that
down.
charge yet? So is that the one you were up for last? Or have you been up for that yet?
He's gonna ask me. I mean, did I get charged? Oh yeah. Oh, that actually, yeah, that was another conviction. I was actually charged with public order. I mean, it turns out, I mean, I was remaining silent, but I mean, at one stage they asked me, they said, "You're under arrest
Yeah.
for Section 20, and will you give me your name?" And if I had remained silent, I'd have been okay. But because I said, "No, actually, I'm not giving you my name," that's
Yeah.
an offence. If you're arrested under Section 20, you have to give your name. If you don't, that's an offence.
Yeah.
So I was charged with not giving my name. Public Section 20 public order, or 24, I think it was. They asked me to change it around one stage of Section 20, then it was 24, and then it was back to 20 again. So I have no clue. But what do they do? They charged me with that. I mean, I got this guy who's a young man. I thought, this is a guy who will, you know, represent me. He understands that drugs aren't this dangerous,
Yeah.
and he'll plead my case properly. And he said, just plead guilty, and then I'll say what I say to the judge. And so we did, and I pled guilty. And then your man was just about to say something to me. He said, "Well, judge," and the judge, that's it, pardon enough, pled guilty, not listening to anymore, that's it.
That's it.
Refused to listen to word one. He nothing about it after Christmas Day and just being in good form and none of that at all. Nothing happened. And the judge said, "Drugs." That's all he said. Just one word I was no drugs. And I was being stopped for drugs. That was, as far as he was concerned, and that was it. It was all to do with drugs. So he gave me he sentenced me to 3 months community service, and then the court clerk pops up and says, "Sorry, Judge, you can't sentence somebody to community service." And they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm sentencing you to 3 months in prison, and in lieu of this 3 months, you get you're sentenced to probation for 3 months." And so I mean, it was a farce. I mean, why people could, I mean, if in the history of the drug wars are written, I'll get much, but I won't get a footnote or anything. But I mean, there's like, I mean, the ridiculous things that go on because cannabis is illegal. I mean, it's bananas.
It's
I said that to one court, reported. But actually, the court reporter reported this. You can find it online that John O Regan, or whatever way they call me, calls a whole situation bananas and ridiculous. I forget, there's some other word they used, but it was made for a good headline, that bananas, calling the whole thing. I mean, because I started smoking cannabis when I was like 20 over in Holland, and Jesus, like same as having a pint, I mean, what's the big deal? And coming back to Ireland then and finding out you're the danger to society,
Well, the real danger to society is the fucking prohibition. It's the prohibition that causes the gangsters and all of that nasty stuff that goes with. So cannabis, like the stories that I'd be covering on 420 News, where you're finding cannabis grow houses with guns and stuff inside them. This sort of thing shouldn't be happening at all. There shouldn't be cannabis and guns in any stories unless the guns are legal and registered and all of that kind of carry on. But what it seems like all of the cannabis and guns in Ireland, it's to do with crime and organised crime, and that's not good. And it's all because of prohibition. And prohibition is dragging you to court now. So you're currently, remind me again, you're doing a master's course in NUIG, is that right? On sustainability, is it?
No, it's an agricultural innovation.
Agricultural innovation.
We were up when we were in the court Ennis that day. I remember one of the talked to one of the guards there, and I mentioned to him that I'm doing a course in agricultural innovation. He turned around to me, I'm doing a master's course. Then I said, when he asked me in what, I said in agricultural innovation. Big smile up, and he's going, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" But like it's I did my best as we were chatting before the show that I'm trying to do. I didn't want to get involved in the medicinal side of cannabis because it's flipping, it's heartbreakingly horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's only so many horror stories you can listen to.
It's brought me to tears on the show a couple of times. It really has brought me to tears.
I mean, for most people, you kind of, when you're out there and, legalization is a factor that you'd like to see happen and they're not that heavily involved. But when you do get more involved, like the two of us are, then it becomes a daily thing. I mean, you read about stuff day after day after day of some other person or some other family or some other child or some other person who's going through heartbreaking stuff, and all that's required for them to be able to live their lives as like the rest of us do is just to be able to have this chemical or this plant, this little piece of it. I mean, and they don't. I mean, there's. I heard there was a guy on what was it, on the Joe Duffy show, and I mean, he put a little bit of cannabis and mixed it in with butter, I think, and I mean, I think he had a spoon a day or something like that, and he was able to have a normal afternoon. Okay, he was still, he wasn't cured or anything, like he was still, I mean, he still felt it, but I mean, he was able to function and
his quality of life improved with access to cannabis.
Big time.
Like that story was a man who was growing one plant. It was a Charlotte's Web plant, which wasn't even a higher THC. It was like about a 1% THC, if memory serves correct. So, and that one plant would have provided him a year's worth of cannabis medicine. Our cops came and took that, destroyed it. And what he was saying is that it was the pain medication. He reduced his reliance on the pain medication, and he was given a better quality of life. He was able to engage in activities more. He was less lethargic and things like that because of like the kind of the sedative nature of the opiate kind of based drugs that he was taking. Cannabis just fitted much better, and he's being criminalized here now in Ireland because of that. Nobody's found out who he was, actually. He remained anonymous on that interview on Joe Duffy that day.
The guards probably know exactly who he was.
The guards know who he was, and whoever ratted him knew who he was.
Yeah. But I mean, he had to spend his Christmas. I mean, he had a nice Christmas to look forward to. He did a nice bit of cannabis there to keep him going for the whole year, and gone.
Yeah.
He's Christmas Day. I don't even. Hopefully, some kind soul just or Santa. I think did Santa call over to him and drop a little baggie for Christmas or something. Hopefully, some. If Santa didn't call to him, hopefully some
Well, you can
kind
probably relate somewhat to that. I suppose not on the medical side of it, but in one of the raids, you were telling me you had just gone out and picked up a jar of cannabis that you'd hidden out wherever you might hide your cannabis outside of the house, and the guards came not long after that then and raided you and took away, what was it, 100 grams of cannabis, and they're now trying to do you for dealing then for that. Like,
Yeah.
how did that feel for you after the guards left and you're sitting there jarless? No bud, like, what's that like?
You know something? I wasn't that bothered. I'm not joking.
Really?
I'm going to be honest with you now, and I'm going to say I mean, not having cannabis is not a big deal, really.
No, but it's not having to not having cannabis. It's having it taken from you.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I thought what bothered me was the amount of work and effort that went into producing that is just going to be up, it's going to be thrown in a chimney.
Exactly. That's a
what
hard
bothered
work
me.
gone into to produce a good product.
I mean, that it's one of these things that I've been through a lot in my life. And I mean, if I were to tell all my horror stories,
Yeah.
you'd be
But did your heart not break a little bit?
But like one of the things that I've learned over like is waste is once you've wasted it, that's it. If Friday night comes around and you don't go out there and boogie and dance and have a great time and get off with somebody,
Yeah.
that Friday night is gone. It's over forever. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, can't waste. I mean, like, you know, I mean, the Dead Poet Society sees the day. I mean, I'm not suggesting people get up in the morning like Mary Poppins and go, "Oh, what a wonderful day!" Woo. You know, I mean, because we're human beings. We get, you know, I mean, we can't live like that. Some people can, you know, but like, so I mean, waste is just something that bugs the hell out of me. That anything to be wasted, you know, I mean, something good to be wasted, you know, that I amount of time and okay, you know, I mean, it's 100 grams out of maybe half of what I actually ended up from that particular crop. Like, but it what bothered me was the waste that I made put all this work into it and got nothing from it. But apart from that, you know, not having, I compare what I have to go lose. I felt that I had a better contribution to make that way. If I got involved
Sorry,
with this,
John, I just lost you for the last 2 minutes there. Sorry.
No, I was saying that I didn't want to get involved with medicinal because I thought it would quite rightly come across as being opportunistic, that I was hopping on the medicinal bandwagon just to get recreational somewhere down the track. So even though that wasn't in my mind, I kind of, it just suited me better. I mean, you have to do what suits you. I mean, there's no point doing things that don't suit you.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
like,
So there's that. That's when you kind of drove on. The Cannabis Activist Alliance kind of came from that.
well,
I
be
know.
fair,
I know it wasn't something you set
that
out to
wasn't my
do.
idea at all.
No, no,
Wasn't my
that's what I was just about to say. It was the Cannabis Party, as it so rightly says on your hat.
Yeah, it grew
I
up
kind
from
of
that,
it evolved. Yeah.
yeah.
But it could
But like,
always come back to it. I seen the Green Party there lost another member of their party yesterday. I think his name was Peter Kavanagh, councillor, but he stepped away from the Green Party. So certainly Ireland could do with another political party. I don't know about it come in the form of a cannabis party, but it certainly would be a party that will be adopting cannabis policy as part of its thing. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities there because some of these Green Party members that have been stepping away have a lot of experience, but are probably interested in cannabis reform too. So who knows what might happen there with that. But the Cannabis Activist Alliance then has the party has pivoted into that now. But you've had to step away yourself because of your own commitments to your course. Yeah, that's right. So maybe if you wanted to talk a little bit about the Cannabis Activist Alliance there and what the group is doing, and maybe give a shout out for new members as well.
there's I don't know how big it, when I started out, there was like 13 or 14. It went up to about 55. I don't know how many are there, but there's not, you know, a lot of these groups, you get people, they get added to the group and they know they're added and they say that's fine, you know, but they're not active, and this is supposed to be an activist alliance, you know. So I mean, it started out, there was a very young man, Evan Pereira. He wanted to organise a provisional organising committee for Ireland's Cannabis Party, and I said, great, I'll join. He was part of the group, or part of Register of Ireland's Cannabis Party, and we formed this thing, provisional organising committee to organise the national conference. That's what it started out as. And then Evan decided, there's a pile of people got involved in that, and then Evan started a poll. Do you want to be a political party? Do you want to be involved in that, or do you want to do activism? And out of 35 people, I think more than half, I think it was like 20 people voted, and about 17 voted for activism. So that was that. I mean, then it got renamed Cannabis Activist Alliance. Evan wasn't interested anymore. I think he wanted to do a political party, so he decided to head off. But like, there's a core group of people there, like, meeting every Tuesday night for, I think it's 2 hours. It probably is. It's still 2 hours. It was 2 hours when I was there for the first 4 weeks, and there's a mighty amount of stuff, passing backward and forward. There's lots of. There's good. It's good to, how would I describe it? There's a bit of a chat. It can be very chatty for the second hour, but for the first hour, there's a lot of things that we need to get done, and there's people. Yeah. All it needs is people to get involved. I mean, there's actually a proposal there that could legalize, that could end the whole thing. I mean, there's a proposal. So I mean, if you there's a proposal to I don't want to be saying about it now because it's not my idea. So but so I mean, if people are really interested in legalizing cannabis in Ireland, and they want to get involved with a group that are active and that are planning and are going things ready for the 420. They're even at one stage going to do a march for my court case. I mean, I'm not asking for that, or I prefer people to concentrate on other things, like, because I won't be doing anything for months anyway. I mean, my court case will just be guilty or not guilty, and I'll just be that. So the actual case won't be heard for another couple of months or 6 months maybe. But like, so there's this going on now. There's people out there right now, and there's a lot of little things that need doing, and when you add up, there's a lot of little things. There can be a lot that needs, a lot of work needs doing. And I mean, even if you were able to devote an hour or two a week, even, I mean, that would be, and if there was enough people joined in a part of that group, things could happen this year. I mean, with Gino Kenny's bill coming up, and with the 420, if we can make that bigger and get on the bloody news. I mean, I hate to say it, like, but unless people see you on the RTE 61 news, it didn't happen. There's nothing happening, I mean, there. So I mean, that'll be, if that group takes off, things could really happen this year.
And with Gino Kenny's bill coming up, it'd be interesting to see, like, say, with your own case, like, one is in February, the other is in April. And if Gino was to submit his bill to government before then, it'd be interesting to see what you could do in your own case then, to be kind of like, hey, Judge, there's a bill there before government that's going to see this kind of whole thing. Can you just put off my case there until they sort that out? I wonder, could you even make that argument now, knowing that Gino Kenny is going to be putting a bill forward? Hey, Judge, can you put off my case there till next year or the year after? Can you ask my victim there? Do they object? I don't think my victim is going to object. So, like, I think there's certainly room for argument. Have you thought about that at all? Has that crossed your mind?
Yeah, it's crossed my mind. That you could say to the judge, listen, there's possibility that in 6 months' time I'd be sitting in, or whatever. Just say he gave me a prison sentence, that I could be in prison, and this thing is legalized. Wouldn't it be in the cause of justice? Wouldn't be justice be better served by not hearing the case until the Irish legislature have had a chance to give their say on the matter? And there's no need to rush this thing. Like, I mean, I could put that forward, but I mean, it's. He might go for it. I mean,
it'd be interesting. Anyway, it'd be more for a solicitor, I suppose, to try to argue that one on certain points. Maybe there's something there that a solicitor can do to actually get a case put back to a certain date for whatever reasons. He might tell you to have a bug that day or something because of the whole coronavirus right now. Like, if you were to have an old sniffle there that morning, maybe you might need to go for a coronavirus test. That's another way of getting your case put off, maybe for a bit longer if you wanted that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that at all. But like, there's if I, it's another good reason for getting a solicitor, because I'd
Yeah,
like to. He'd be the person that would say, well, that is, can you delay the case? Is there a reasonable?
yeah,
Because like I think judges in Irish courts as well, they can be a bit like, the personality has a lot to do with, even though there's the law, they have their own peculiarities of what they will and won't listen to, and there's nobody telling them how to do their job. There's no boss of the district court. I mean, there probably is some supervising or some division of some kind, but like they're very independent. So I'd be, yeah, well, I mean, things can't get any worse.
touch wood, John. Jesus, don't say
I
that.
mean, I mean, taking the bright side, I could actually hit on something that because I get the impression from Judge Durkin that he's actually would prefer nearly that I would argue as forcefully as I can in my own corner, that
Yeah.
he dislikes people kind of just folding in. I don't know though. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a
Well, like that,
queer
like I could kind of see why that might be as a person who likes Thai boxing myself. There's no fun just punching a punching bag. It's good when the punching bag's got arms and it's thrown back, i.e., doing a bit of sparring, but another person who can fight you back. Maybe the judges at times they like a person who like snaps back at them a little bit, so they can kind of finally I get to unleash my power now. I can I
Oh,
can
yeah,
show this
I thought,
fella my power. He better like it's that picture of Eric Cartman's coming into my mind now. You better respect my authority. I don't know if you watch South Park, but
that fantastic young woman one day inside in court, and she was putting forward very good legal arguments, and the judge went back and, fair enough,
yeah,
fair enough. She's arguing absolutely perfectly. He even mentioned that how fantastic it was to hear somebody speaking like she was speaking.
yeah,
So I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't like playing that game. I mean,
yeah,
I don't like. I remember going up to Ennis courthouse one day, and Judge Durkin was in the foyer, standing with. I could very easily have walked up to him and said, "Hello, Judge, how are you doing?" And just do what any solicitor worth his salt would have done if he had an opportunity to have a chat with the judge and get on his good side. I mean, have a kind of relationship there where, to an extent, where he isn't going to freak out and which
yeah.
is what he could do. I mean, if he doesn't know it at all. But
Do
so I
do
mean,
they even
I don't
have
want
a
to play
human
that game.
side?
I don't want to, what's that? Well, sorry.
Do they even have a human side like these
Well,
judges? Like, do they not just have it's their job? They leave their human side at home for their wife and
well,
kids.
was it yourself or was it Natalie Regan? I can't remember who it was. Told me about. No, it was Natalie Regan. I mean, when the interview that you did with her the last day, when I heard that, I said, "This can't be true. This can't be right." There's a thing called Section 28,
Hmm.
where the judge can order that you be taken into the care of the local health board, and the local health board decides then, do you need treatment, do you need
Yeah,
hospitalization, whatever. It's nothing to do with the court. It's nothing to do anymore to do with the court or to do with the prisons, and that thing has been on the books for fucking ever, and
yeah. They
since
never use it.
and it's never ever not once been used. I mean,
Yeah,
I thought this is absolute rubbish, and then I mean, it's one of these things that there's people out there watching this aren't into activism. If you're into activism, what you will do is what I did, and you will then go look up Section 28 and read it,
yeah,
read every bit of it, and you
yeah,
go, what the heck,
yeah,
Okay, full disclosure, I didn't read every line. I mean, you have to, when you're reading these things, read them as fast as you can, because I mean, you're talking this huge long document. Like, so when
yeah.
you get
It's
to the part where
VMAs.
and legal documents repeat themselves, then there's a slight change, and the whole thing is just repeated again on
Yeah,
this other thing. So you'd be reading the same thing over and over again anyway,
yeah.
half the time. So
No,
so
but
anyway,
there certainly has there's been that tool within the instrument of the Misuse of Drugs Act, and they haven't been using it at all, and that would have been much more beneficial than to the public health, because it would have been given, I suppose, in certain regards, we would have been able to draw the lines between who needs help and who doesn't, because you would have had a lot of people then being referred to these clinics who the clinic or the therapist would have been turned around and said, hey, this person doesn't have an addiction, this person doesn't, and then maybe it would have been them who would have went back to the courts and say, hey, you keep sending us people who don't need our help. These people
even
have just
I,
been caught with something. This is a problem in our society, because this
I,
is a problem. A lot of people who get caught with drugs, they're not
well,
drug addicts, but you're deemed a drug addict for getting caught with drugs a lot of the times by our courts.
when you were talking there, it suddenly struck me, and I don't know why it didn't hit me before this, like, but like, do you know what else they'd have discovered if all the cannabis smokers had all been sent off Section 28 instead of going to prison and getting fined? they'd have found people that actually did need help.
Yeah, that's
Those
true
people
too.
that actually do have a problem
Self-medicating.
and do
Yeah,
need help. They'd have found them
yeah,
instead of
that's
picking
true.
them up, getting them in a prison cell and making them bloody worse. I
Do you know what,
mean,
yeah.
I don't think prison is supposed to be good for mental health, is it? Like,
Yeah, no,
so I
you're
mean,
dead right. I'm not ever seen it from my side of that aspect. So yeah,
but like,
they would have found all those patients using it for
yeah,
things like chronic pain and stuff. You're dead
they would have
right.
known. They'd have said we've got like it's about it's about is it 14 in 1,000 or something like that. I think it's 0.14% of people that smoke cannabis that you can trace the, that I don't know. That's years ago I read this, so I don't want to be saying something now that isn't true. Is right. So whatever small percentage there is of people that uh, that their condition is worsened by cannabis or triggered by cannabis or is made noticeable maybe by cannabis as a symptom that you can tell, why is this person smoking? So why is it? Why, I mean, there's some people and they have to have a smoke first thing in the morning, and they're not. So I mean, there's people there that they would have found like, but as I don't know why I was saying that again, but like,
No,
oh yeah,
yeah.
it all comes back to what you were asking me there about, do they have any humanity? And I came up with this, as I said, I mean, I'd always had an idea that judges were kind of, a bit on the far right side, but I mean, a bit on the far right, there's an oxymoron, isn't it? But like, so yeah, very far right. Like that's what I thought judges were like, but I never thought they were actually cruel or anything. Like, I mean, but when they had this facility availed them since the year flipping, it's been there since the start apparently. That this Section 28 where you can be put in the care of the health board decides if you problem or not and what course of treatment is required, and you're mandated to take that treatment then. So I mean, it's not all flipping wine and roses. Like, so they could mandate that you take such and such a thing, that whatever. I mean, I met a guy in Dublin one time who told me that he was mandated into taking things and he could never get high again. Somebody passed him a joint and said, I can't get nothing off it. I just get a headache off it, like after the pills. But he could have been undercover cop too for all I know. But so as I mean, I'd never thought that I never would have said that of judges that they were unnecessarily harsh or cruel, to
Yeah,
use the word I'm trying not to use, to be cruel. But when I saw that thing, that actually Natalie is totally 100% dead on, Natalie Regan, dead
yeah,
right. That they had this facility and it's never once been used. Never. There have been solicitors who have tried to plead that and never once. I mean, in the 4 years that I've been getting summonses and been down in court and met different solicitors, not one of them has ever talked about Section 28. I didn't even know it
jeez.
existed until Natalie Regan mentioned it on your show.
Yeah.
So tune into Martin's World. You learn loads of
You learn a few bits and pieces.
yeah, yeah.
Natalie Regan actually is going to be one of the speakers next week. It's going to be a very interesting event. That's the event with Gino Kenny next week.
Oh,
And yeah, on that actually, Gino Kenny is going to be putting a bill before the government, as we're all aware. None of us really know what's going to be within that government, but knowing what we know about our current government, I suppose, like right now, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you that that bill is going to succeed?
well, I think,
And just be honest.
being honest, no chance.
Zero.
Fianna Fáil,
I put it at
you
the
can't pass
zero.
without
Oh,
Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael behind it, unless
yeah.
there's some major, unless some activist group out there gets hundreds of people to join them and there's some major league
Mhm.
disruption, maybe, or whatever, and the activists come up with, like, I mean, there's some activism where you have to disrupt, another activism can be planting cannabis plants outside the city hall to I mean, there's no, as
Yeah.
non-violent gets, like, so I mean, there's like I mean, if there was it would take something big, it would take a shock to the political system. It would take, hold on a second, you mean there's tens of thousands of people there that are not going to vote, that are going, that are just, I mean, for instance, if you got people that they're going to pledge to vote for people for profit, I mean, if you got something like that, I mean, I wrote to people for profit saying to them, what do you think this idea of 100 people joining on the day of Gino Kenny's bill is not passed, or the day after, then 100 the day after that, and keep going until thousands and thousands? I mean, that, how would you grab? I mean, obviously it'll be too late then, but so I mean,
Yeah.
what needs to be done is something has to grab their attention, the FFFG establishment, and say, hold on a second, will we go along? Is there any way that they can go along with Gino Kenny without coming across as I don't know, what is it, the image that they've crafted and sculpted for themselves that they're trying to maintain, that,
Yeah, that's
you
it.
can
Like
trust
it's
us, Fianna Fáil, kind of Fine Gael, we're the party of probity and we'll look after your money for you. Like, so you can trust us, and no matter what happens with your money, or to be the sound lads when you come down to the clinic and you need some hedge trimmed or something, and you a pothole filled or something. You can come down to us. So we're sound as a pound. Like, we're not these people who are profit crazy dudes who are going to taxi like to 90% and try to make the communist world and all this rubbish. Like, so I mean, I don't know what seismic event could occur. I mean, when you think about it, it only struck me the other day that Donald Trump would have won his election if it wasn't for the coronavirus. I reckon. I mean, I would love to see the statistics on it. Like, there are statisticians out there who can make a fairly good estimate of how things wouldn't have gone if coronavirus hadn't happened. And I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, to keep that back, it took something major, a world pandemic, to ensure that we didn't have a madman in charge of the White House years ago.
again.
I mean, what it would take to shift Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Like, I mean, the only thing I can think of is if there was going to be, if there was a chance that people who are profit solid, or that people that were genuine about their intention to legalize cannabis, if they thought this was such a huge issue, then they might. I mean, you might get at
Yeah.
them from the medical side. You know what I mean? But I mean, there
Yeah,
again, I'm finding
I
myself
definitely agree with you. There definitely needs to be a strong message sent. For me, I think I've made no secret out of it. Like, I'm a big supporter
Oh,
of people's movements that get involved in civil disobedience, peaceful civil disobedience. Like, when it comes to our drug of choice, this plant, cannabis, like, I have some hair in my grinder in front of me. Like, there's nobody being harmed right now. So if I was to walk into a Garda station, let's say, with even just a pinch out of this, and just do that every day for the next couple of months until Gino Kenny's bill gets voted on and what have you, like that would certainly send a message, because I know myself it's going to take the guards ages to bring me to court for any said crime. But I would hope then that maybe we could capture the I don't know, the hearts of more people to kind of get involved in this kind of campaign. Like yourself now, you're going to be up in court, but I understand with your own commitments to college. Well, let's just say on your way home from college, if it was afforded to you, if let's say if we got sponsored by one of the CBD flower companies out there who too are being targeted by the same prohibition, and they were
yeah.
willing to give you a little baggie of civil disobedience, and maybe we could even label it that and all, baggie of civil disobedience, and it has a flower of cannabis in there, which is illegal. And you go in and you just present yourself to the Gardaí in order to get the cogs, the wheels engaged. And you get so many people in there. It's kind of like what the hackers do online. You're kind of DDoSing a thing, and like you cause the system to crash effectively by just or bombarding it with people willing to engage in this form of civil disobedience, which is so peaceful. Like I said, this is civil disobedience right now, flashing this grinder of cannabis. Like I smoked a bong a few seconds ago. That's all civil disobedience. That's all breaking a law. I'm doing it publicly. This is going to go out
Mhm. Yeah.
to the wide world, onto the public sphere later. So it's all public civil disobedience. But online, it's only semi-effective. Actually going to the guards, actually engaging the system, that's where true activism is. Like, I see so many keyboard warriors out there, like, calling themselves activists, and don't get me wrong, some of the message spreading online, it's very good, but that's like the low hanging fruit of activism, being like a Twitter page, being an Instagram page, and sharing memes and thoughtful posts. Like that's easy to do. That's the low hanging fruit of activism, and it has its place. Like, don't get me wrong, every piece of the puzzle is important, but the
Yeah.
real activism is actually out there, like holding a placard on the street, walking along in a protest, really getting out there and expressing your views, taking part in like radio interviews, TV interviews, different debates, like and volunteering with different organizations, actually real world work, not just fucking tweeting about it. So I don't know, I want to try to capture all of these people out there who are engaged online, and I want to get them to go down to their local Garda station and take part in this national movement of civil disobedience behind Gino Kenny's bill, because as you said, you say to yourself, like, zero hope you have right now. But
Right now,
maybe,
yeah.
like, where would that be? Like, let's say if I went down there to the guard station now later today, and by next week we had 20 people going down every day, and the week after that turned to 50, let's say, like, that builds up because that one person. So by the end of week one, you have 7 cases built for me if I went to one guard station every day. But say at the end of that week, I have 10 people joining with me. Well, that's 70 in the second week. And we have 50 in that. Well, that's 350 in that third week when there's 50 people there. Like, you see how the numbers build up? Like, if I was to do it twice a day, 3 times a day, like, I think that's our best way, or ourselves, the people on the street. Like, I think that's how we can best engage in this. I know it scares some people, but feck, man,
If
like,
you've already been arrested, what have you got to lose? Like, I mean, if you've already been arrested, then
yeah,
there's a lot of, when you were talking there about the low hanging fruit. I mean, there's people online that support full as much as you and I support legalizing cannabis, they do as well, but they've got their lives to lead. And if their boss saw on their Facebook page that they'd liked this or posted this thing about cannabis, I mean, who knows what could happen to them. At the moment, they're Joe Ordinary and Mary Ordinary, and they're
yeah,
completely their boss and their lives have no problem. They might have a smoke maybe at a party once a year or twice a year kind of thing, or maybe 3 times a year, or whatever length of time they do it.
yeah.
And they totally support cannabis. I mean, they just have such busy lives, bringing up kids and things that they, or whatever, or, what I mean, or they're doing a master's degree, whatever.
I'm doing both of those things, John. Bringing up kids and a master's degree.
Well, you're still a young man. You can do all kinds of things, but I mean,
I can do all sorts of things. That's right.
but like, I mean, there's people out there that just don't want to be. A lot of people, I think, there's a huge. If they could safely come out, they would. But I mean, they're asking them to. What I think. I'm just going to put this out there as an idea. Like, I worked out the arithmetic. I said, okay, I looked it up online. The Gardaí make 200,000 arrests every year.
Okay.
If you're just talking about an extra 1,000 arrests or 2,000 arrests, that's, yeah, I mean, as Lisa Simpson might say, me.
Yeah, it's not even a percent.
Whatever. 2,000. We just stick them in a fucking drawer in a file somewhere and get around to them eventually. Who cares? But if it's like, if it gets up to, if you can get up to like 50,000 sounds like a huge number. When you break
50,000.
that down, 1,000 a week, if you can get a couple of hundred people, if you can get a couple of hundred, I mean, 10 or 20, a couple of tens, 10, 20, 30, yeah, I mean, that's starting to make an impact. But if you can get if a couple of hundred people were said to themselves, listen, I've been arrested already, my cover is blown, they know who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, and there must be a couple of hundred people out there, I reckon, who'd be able to say, well, okay, if I can get out to my local hemp shop, they'll give me a quarter of a bag. They don't have to give me a whole gram or a whole bag, just a small little thing, and I go up with your, as you say, this civil disobedience CBD flower.
Yeah,
and
CBD baggy.
Pop it in the station. Say, here I am, lads. Another bit of civil disobedience. This is illegal. This is in my possession, and I'm here for you to arrest me.
Yeah.
And
they're going to run out of evidence bags.
But I was thinking how it would work. And you know what they could say? They could say, shag off. They could say, give us the cannabis thing and shag off. We're not going to do it. Thank you. We're not going to waste time.
They could do that then, but this is what they should be doing all along.
There's a way around that. There's a way around. I was trying to think how the civil disobedience work. And you have to work it out. Like, I mean, like, you have to have an analytical brain and, like, work every little detail. I walk this out. I walk into the police station. I walk the whole thing out. What you do is you say to the policeman, I've got a cannabis joint in my pocket and I want to be arrested, blah, blah, blah. And if they then turn around and say, well, okay, shag off. You were in 3 times yesterday, 4 times the day before. We have 26 arrests from you already. Feck off. Okay, well, then I'm just going to have to go outside the door and smoke it then, I mean, I'm just going to, and there's 2, I mean, I'm going to
live stream it.
I'm going to live stream myself smoking a joint outside the cop shop. So, I mean, if that's what you want me to do, okay, if you're not going to arrest me, what do you think I'm going to do? So, I mean, that's...
No, but at that point, have you not won? Like, even outside of smoking it, I think you're smoking the evidence that you've won. I would make that loud and clear. Here I am at the cop station and they're unwilling now to do their job all along when they're like telling me, that's what they tell me.
cops refusing to arrest cannabis smokers. Could you imagine?
Oh, that's a win. Like, that's the win.
Yeah,
If you got to that point where you broke, like, you're basically breaking the Gardaí, by getting them to that point where they're going to say, look, I'm sick of arresting you. Jesus, like, all right, you've made your point, and they don't arrest you. Then at that point, that they don't take your cannabis off you, then I think you've won. That's where we've won. That's where you make your case, and this is what they have to be doing with cannabis consumers all along.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
always
I
been
see. I
my
get you.
argument. It's like they stop and search at the side of the road. Look, Garrett, I have a bit of cannabis there in my car. I'm not consuming it. Look, I'll do your drug or 5,000 or whatever sobriety test, because obviously that drug or 5,000 is a load of nonsense, actually. But you do whatever sobriety test is required of you. But they shouldn't be bloody, but where you get it, I'm just doing my job. Well, if they're just doing their job, then you should never encounter that point where they turn around and say, well, actually, I'm sick of arresting you, because why weren't they sick of arresting us all along? They're doing it for 50 years. What has it taken to get to the point of one person going in 26 times in a week, and presenting themselves? If that's all it took all along, shit, or we should have done this a long time ago.
Well, I mean, it won't. It won't. I mean, they'll find a way around it. I mean, the guards are flipping.
Oh, they will, yeah, definitely.
They're wasting guard time as well. I mean, I don't. I mean,
It'd be interesting to see how they react to it, though.
Well, I mean, they can ignore 10, 20, or 30. They can't ignore a couple of hundred people. And if it got bigger,
so 50,000 is the number you threw out there earlier, anyway. So 50,000 is the number of cases
well, I mean,
we have to build up cumulatively within a year period.
And if there's 20,000, that's a 10% increase. That's again, you're talking. It's not, but if it's 25% increase in a. I mean, or ideally you should be going for the full 100,000 like arrests in a year, and they, I mean, if they, unless there's some some way in law to kind of say, okay, we join all these 1,000 arrests into our 200 arrests into one charge. I mean, I don't know. They might be. What I think it would really be a good idea to speak to a solicitor. I mean, as I said,
the solicitor's never going to entertain this idea. They're going to just tell you not to
just
do it.
find out. If you can. I contacted the guy the other day. There's a very nice old guy. People you meet in country areas. Like, I mean, the things they do for you. Like, I mean, it's embarrassing. But like, I was trying to get in contact with the solicitor through him, just to bounce the idea off him of a civil disobedience tactic. And it's a tactic similar to tactics that they used back in the 1960s in the United States to get their civil rights. So I mean, this is I think it's a valid tactic, but I mean, the state will use whatever power they have against us. I mean, they'd be stupid not to. I mean, of course they will. So if there's some power that they have that could knock the whole thing on its head in 2 seconds flat, well then obviously it's a stupid idea. Forget about it. But I mean, if there,
the power that they have is the arrest.
He could say that there's a, do you know that you could do this as well? I mean, did you know that you could ask to speak every time you're going to be arrested, that you ask to speak to a certain person and they have to see you. If you go into a station and you say, I don't know if such a thing could be nonsense and doesn't exist, but I mean, is there some way that they have to respond to you and have to deal with you within 24 hours? I mean, a solicitor would know.
There's nothing like that at all. There's nothing like that at all. There's no expedient way of dealing with your case. Like, I deal with cases there on the 420 move where
you saying that,
like it takes over a year before your case goes up. Like, I've appealed my case now. I was told I might get a response from them by February, but because they're gone back into level 5 lockdown now, I think they're doing less cases by the day. So that means I'm going to be waiting even longer. So guys, this is the time now for the civil disobedience. Like, is during the level 5 lockdown, you can go down to your local Garda station. It's obviously going to be within your 5K. If it's not, well, you have a very valid reason for traveling there because you want to engage in a protest, which is it's your fucking constitutional rights to engage in protests. And this is social distancing. Wear your mask, go to the Garda station, fucking sterilize your hands. Like, well, what can they actually say? I'm actually not calling for large gatherings now in this form of protest. I'm going to do it on my own, pretty much, like I did the last time. Except the last time I had a group of people with me, but they didn't engage in the civil disobedience of handing themselves in, which was a missed opportunity. But look, it is what it is. It was a learning process, and I certainly learned.
I mean, the civil rights people in the States had the same thing. Like, I mean, and about 20 years ago, there was groups were involved in civil marches, like things like that, and there was thousands of people going to these marches. They thought it was going to happen. It didn't work out for whatever reason, I don't know. But the learning process that goes on. Like, I mean, for instance, I mean, I met one of the guys that was involved in that thing back 20 years ago, and they tried to start a political party back then. And he told me something that I had no idea about. He said they couldn't form a political party because nobody was paying any dues. That was a major big deal. That people were able to join for free, and the registrar in Leinster House said, "That's it, kabush. There's no way I'm giving you official party status because there's nobody paying any dues." So I mean, there's a learning thing goes on, and we're not going to be perfect in it. And the more people that join the Cannabis Activist Alliance and decide to get involved, you know, the more people that are putting in ideas and have their own experience.
The party has a foreman.
I mean, you'd be amazed. I mean, you could have a bit of information about something that happened to you in something that you know, or you might, or more importantly, you may have connections. If you have a connection with a solicitor, if you have a friend who's a solicitor, you'll be able to ask that person's advice and for the group. You know, I mean, it's very, like, as we demonstrated only half an hour ago. How long are we talking now, by the way? I mean,
we're getting close to the hour there. We might be breaching the hour, but yeah,
half an hour ago talking about this, and you know that about two guys talking about legal issues, and if you know, I mean, it's like two people deciding on the plumbing, you know, looking at a car engine, as if by osmosis.
Maybe to get a solicitor on the podcast, maybe.
Well, better, yeah. Well, and Natalie Regan, obviously, fair idea, but she's not a trial lawyer. She's never
not a solicitor yet.
Yeah. So I mean, there's different specializations. Like, so I mean, she'd say herself that she wouldn't be. She'd obviously be better than the two of us.
Certainly would. I have no shame in saying that either. Like, I don't know much about the law.
Like,
it's been.
There you go, Natalie. Nice one, girl. You're fucking the beast.
Yeah. No, super person.
You know, when it comes to that, but you know, I mean, so she'd be with, but like, even I'm sure she'd admit herself that when it comes to, you know, I mean, they're specialized in cases. You learn case law, and you have to.
Oh, law is complex, and it's very like it's a broad thing. Like, yeah.
You need a proper solicitor who knows the Irish court system, who's pled cases and knows what works and what doesn't work, and you know, who can advise you on how to really put the boot in if you're going to do something. Because you could have 100 people. I've been up there before in Dublin, marching around to the door, like, and you know, I mean, it's great to meet people, and it's fabulous day out. But like, cannabis is still illegal, you know. I mean, for all the marching that went on, you know. So, I mean, the idea of this activist idea of forcing the system to acknowledge that there are tens and hundreds of thousands of people that support cannabis legalization, and that you can't just keep on arresting us, and we're not going to bloom and, like the Guy Network, we're mad as not going to take it anymore. You know, that, I mean, if you can get a couple of hundred people going in once or twice a day, and preferably at least twice a day, and doing that continuously, day in, day out, and if that kind of thing gets, I mean, eventually, once you start building up thousands upon, once it gets, they say 1,000, okay, we'll deal with 2,000, 3,000, gets up and up and up. And once this gets, it could build up a momentum of its own, in the sense that if it gets reported that this is going on, you'll have people that have never heard of the Cannabis Activist Alliance will turn around and go, well, Jesus Christ, why not? I can be doing this, you know. I mean, what have I got to lose by flipping, going down? And
well, I'm only one person.
I mean, you don't have to do it every day. You could be just like yourself, you know. You could do it just once, you know, do it once or twice or three times, you know. But ideally, it should be organized, you know. I mean, if you've got a whole, if you've got an alliance of people, of activists, then you can keep track of things. You can send reports to newspapers. You can be interviewed by newspapers saying we're representing all these people, and this is how many people that we know. Whatever the statistics you have, these are how many people have told us that they've gone into police stations to be arrested. And you know, I mean, you'd have I mean, a real a national conversation, you know. I mean, you know,
certainly would be one.
It could be the boost that Gino Kenny needs to kind of, because at the moment, as I said, there's even people that I know in people for profit who acknowledge it as well, that it's not a futile exercise. It's historically important, you know. I mean, that people have put this on the record, that this part of our history, you know, will be written someday, that in 2021 again it was tried, and I mean, I'm no oracle, but I mean, at the same time, I don't see any possibility, without being a fault Fine Gael support, that it will go through, you know.
It's physically impossible, like the way our government is laid out. Like, we need the support of Like it's not. I don't even think we need Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. It's like the Green Party actually. If the Green Party, along with everyone else outside of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, then actually Gino Kenny's bill would get supported. There'd be enough numbers there to support it if everyone else except the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael representatives voted for it. It would get the majority then actually. But sadly, that is just that's
Well, I
a
mean,
better
the
chance
Healy,
of winning the lotto, I think, of that.
well, I mean, didn't one of the Healy Rays vote for Ming's bill back in 2013 on
Yeah,
national
possibly.
ground?
I can't remember now. You could be right in that. Yeah.
I mean, so I mean, I might be I might be over talking something in the sense that, or being too pessimistic. I mean, is there a chance that all of these independents and all of and the Greens and everybody besides Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael that would pass it? I don't know. That's something
Yeah,
I'd
well,
never considered.
the Greens have already come out and said that they are not going to be supporting it, but I wonder, could that change maybe? But who knows? But currently, as it stands, like I would kind of agree with you. Right now, I don't see much hope for that, but I do definitely think I'm going to change my own opinion quite soon as I engage in some civil disobedience. I made a commitment that started this year actually, that I was going to engage in at least one form of civil disobedience protest every month for the next 12 months. And that was at least one a month. We're nearing close to the end of this month now. And I I haven't gone down to the guard station to engage in one of these civil disobedience. So that day is drawn very close. And it's very interesting that Gino Kenny called his meeting on the 1st. So yeah, it'll be a good way to lead up to Gino Kenny's meeting, some form of publicity stunt. But yeah, might be good to organize it a bit better.
I mean, it mightn't be a bad idea. I mean, I go over to Kilrush once a week to do my shopping, collect my dole, and if I can ask the Gardaí to hurry up when they're arresting me, I could get arrested once a week when I'm at it. Like,
yeah, well, that day took only 10 minutes, so.
Well, I mean, they can take a long time to do things. I mean, if you're this kind of civil disobedience, they could keep you waiting in the waiting room for a couple. You could be there for hours. Like,
they can mess around with you if they want. You're dead right. Yeah.
Oh, hey,
Yeah, but let's say if you're live streaming this and they do something like that, it wouldn't be in their favor anyway. It'd work against them. I think publicity wise.
Well, as I've said about 20 times tonight, I mean, there's people. I mean, for years I've been trying to start a political party and to get 300 people to attend a national conference and to agree on things and elect presidents and people and elected party officials, excuse me, and there's been there's support for it, right, but trying to get people to do something, to actually get them involved in particular things. And so you say what you need to get the constitution done for that, you need to get a few other things prepared. So trying to get people to do that never really took off for me. So I mean, but this Cannabis Activist Alliance is taking off, and there's people working diligently week in, week out, and meeting every Tuesday night and on Zoom. So like, if there's anybody watching this thinking of, is there anything that you can do, to support Gino Kenny's bill? And yes, there is. There's this Cannabis Activist Alliance. I don't know anybody else. I mean, I know all kinds. There's Hemp Federation Ireland who are doing their thing. There's people in and effectively, and Hemp Co-op Ireland also very effective. And
for a person unaffiliated with any group, the Cannabis Activist Alliance is probably the most welcoming place for the person.
Anybody is welcome. Yeah. So I mean, if there's a group of people out there just wanting to do things and they're looking for more and better ideas, and if you've got one, then hop along and see how it goes. I mean, you don't have to go every week, you can.
No, I've gone to a couple of the chats, and it's certainly it's very good. As long as they stick to the agenda, it's good. You know that yourself. You can kind of go off on a tangent there sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of very.
Yeah.
It needs.
But no, sorry.
It needs people that know how to run a meeting. I mean, I was doing it for a few weeks, and I mean, I've never chaired meetings in my life, so I mean, and on Zoom. So I mean, it was a huge learning experience for myself trying to keep up.
No, but there's a really good community building there, as you said. I went from was it 10 or 12 or something like that up to like 55 the second week of doing it. And that's definitely reflective of the desire out there for people for change here in regards to the cannabis policy. It's something now that's really needed, and I think we're really at a turning point now. So it's time that the public kind of get together, and the cannabis community actually get together, and gets better organized and better represented. Cannabis Activist Alliance, excellent that they've now become a thing, thanks to yourself, your tireless efforts of
Well,
keep going. And then, you know, as you just keep going, people come along, and you know, things evolve. Yeah, that's all really good. Can I ask, John, what are you smoking at the moment? I seen you puffing on something a while ago.
homebrew, what you call homegrown stuff
Homegrown,
that I
yeah.
are
Industry seeds, or any particular seeds?
I haven't, geez, I used to, when I started out, I mean, I did what, there are two things you're never supposed to do that I've read in Jorge Cervantes' book about how to grow cannabis. One, the number most important thing is you never tell anybody you're growing it. You don't be your best friend, because if you get caught, you're going to always, I mean, it's not in the book, but I figured it out myself. I mean, if you get caught, you don't know who, you told some close friend, you're going to ask yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
you're a human being. You're going to ask yourself, did the person, your best buddy, say it to somebody? You know, did he mention it to his wife or
yeah.
whatever? You know, I mean,
Oh, definitely, yeah.
even though you trust that person and love the person to the bits, the thought will enter your head.
Hmm.
And to get around that, you then don't tell anybody. But the
Yeah.
number two most important rule which I kept that rule, but the second rule, you don't keep records. You never keep records, because when I started out, I was measuring the height of the plants every week. I was, I did
Yeah,
everything but measure the
you're
water
watching them
and
by the second.
it was like an experiment. And it's continued. Like, I mean, I've never grown the same thing twice nearly. And I mean, I just want to try different things, like, and unlike a commercial grower who wants to find the best bang for his buck, like, so so I what that is now, I'd have to look it up on whatever. See, I mean, I couldn't tell you. I mean, the only thing I've ever remembered is that, I mean, from all the types I've grown, is that there's a type called Dutch Dragon that I read it in this magazine that is supposed to be amazing. I grew it, and it is bloody, or it was fantastic. I grew it a second time and it wasn't. So I don't know.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, I definitely would. I mean, after all my years of growing, the only thing I say is Dutch Dragon, and is worth growing. And there's another blueberry. I think I grew blueberry. I mean, I got caught with the blueberry. It was the first time I was raided, and something I'd never normally do. The cops had the plants out in the front, by my front door, like, and so I just decided to see, okay, how good were these plants? I put my hand on top of the biggest bud and stuck my hand down on top of the cola, rubbed it along, and resin on my, it was coated, my hand was coated in resin.
Yeah.
So so I never tried it. I've never smoked blueberry, but I tried going it. I didn't get anything like that results when I tried it a second time. But I don't think it's one of the quandaries of using cannabis as a medicine, is that it's inconsistency, that you can have the same plant, you can get different flowers off different parts of the same plant will they have different THC, CBD and terpene levels. That's not to mention that, you could have the same seeds but in the same year, but they could, every plant is slightly different. It's one of the quandaries for medicinal patients. I mean, one of the things I'm hoping to find out over doing this master's is that is how consistent people, medicinal cannabis patients, the result is. I mean, if you go down to your local hemp shop and you get a particular product, is it the exact same week after week after week, or does it change totally? I
Kind of
mean,
vary, yeah.
I don't know.
But
I don't
that'll
know.
come down to the producer of that, really, and how well defined their practices are. Like, even myself, from my own understanding, coming from the herbal science point of view, there's a organization in America anyway that's I'm most aware of. I can't remember what the Irish equivalent might be, but it was the American Herbal Products Regulatory Authority, I think, American HPRA kind of thing anyway. But basically they give like well defined, like good agricultural practices, but as well as good harvesting practices. Because, like, say something like oh Jesus, off the top of my head now I can't think of any really good examples. But like, some plants you could harvest them in the morning and you could harvest it in the evening, and you get two different like readings or spectrums of whatever from them. like the morning extract could be more beneficial for sleep, while the evening extract actually helps with whatever, back pain or something like that. So yeah, it is definitely important, like well defined. What's
I
that?
thought I heard everything. I thought I'd heard everything about how cannabis can vary, but
No, no, I
I
wasn't talking about cannabis specifically there. I was just talking about herbs in
oh
general.
herb, right.
Yeah,
Right,
just
right.
herbs and herbal medicines and herbal products, like how they're regulated. Like if you were a person who was making a product, you would have it well defined. You would have your marker compounds laid out. So you'd
Mhm.
have your specifications there. You'd have maybe an independent lab. It might be in-house testing there. What you're confirming then and keeping record of batches and of things like that. Like in order to ensure consistency of what you just said there, like to make sure that patients are getting the same in every week, every
I
out.
presume they do. I don't. Another thing, part of
But
my
in the
master's
CBD,
was
it's not going on in the CBD currently. Like that sort of testing is not going on in the CBD. I reckon you could go into the Holland and Barrett now or some of the other places, and you could probably still find products up there that don't really meet what it is that's said on the label. Sometimes it could have too much. Sometimes it could have none.
well. I
In
mean,
terms of CBD.
as loath though I am to say it, there was a raid done in February last year around all the hemp places, all the hemp shops, and they brought in all these products that were being sold and manufactured and sold as CBD products. And the variety, what they found, I mean, none of us in the cannabis community railed about it, but like the fact is that what was being sold as CBD products, it's not been properly regulated. So
No.
there's all kinds of there's some stuff that was sold which was supposed to have CBD. I think it was Holland and Barrett. I'm not certain. What was found to have no CBD at all in it,
Yeah.
none, zero. And
Yeah.
there's other one 38% or something. And so it varied a huge amount. I mean, it didn't say what it didn't do what it said in the tin. It had some. So that's a
There's
problem.
been a number of recalls done by the FSAI and the HPRA because of products being found with like having too much THC in them. And as you just said there, like products being found with no THC or no CBD in them at all. So like that is very alarming. I wanted to do a project myself back in 2018 for my final year project in the herbal science course, but sadly I wasn't able to just because of fucking
That's my
stupid
project.
rules.
No, I've laid it out for my for the course supervisors. Is that
Excellent. So you're going to take products off the shelf and test them.
no, what I'm hoping to find out first off, I'm going to talk to a load of patients, medicinal
Mhm.
patients, and just have a chat with them, just to know, or just 5 or 6 things I just want to know to ascertain. Is there? Well, I'd love to know. Is there a particular strain? I mean, like does OG Kush good for this, and this, and another strain
Yeah.
is good for. I mean, I know that you can go on any website and they can tell you this. They
Yeah.
can have that. They have that information,
Hmm.
but I've never seen that. That's never been done, to my knowledge. It's never been done scientifically to
Yeah.
actually.
But you won't be able to do that within Ireland. You'll have to get those patients from outside Ireland, would you not?
Well, I'm hoping to just as much. Well, I mean, I'm going to cast a broad net and see what comes in. But
Yeah.
what I'm particularly interested in is talking to people who use the totally legal CBD products at the
Okay.
moment, and finding out are they getting what they want? I mean, is there a particular strain that they could be getting that's consistent? Technical kind
Yeah.
of stuff that's boring as shag. Like, but I mean, it's if the needs of CBD patients could be met in Ireland, my proposal would be to set up a grow facility to grow the stuff totally legal, apply to the HBRA for a
For
license
which now? CBD only.
for CBD only. I
Yeah.
mean,
But why would we, like, even on that now, why would we set the bar at CBD only? And
it's legal. That's the only reason, because I can
but
an
CBD
application for it.
is legal, but cannabis is not. And if you're going to argue for cannabis to be legal, would you not be more about royal to argue for the form of cannabis which has been more beneficial to people, which is the more wider spectrum
Yeah, yeah, that's what people
cannabis that
want.
has even just a little bit more THC, like your man with the Charlotte's Web that we were talking about earlier, the Joe Duffy guy who got raided. That was Charlotte's Web, 1% CBD, 1% THC, but about 20% CBD, or thereabouts. I think it was actually even 16% CBD. But like why would we be only growing CBD only? Like, it'd be interesting, like, cause
I mean, it would be great to do all of that, but like, I mean, I'm only one person, and I can only,
yeah,
part of my job to do this master's degree, involves focusing it on a practical project, something that could eventually, that has the possibility of being a new business.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, if I could do a business plan for an theoretical, which I've done before. I mean, I did a business plan for how to go outdoors, and I've
Yeah,
costed the
yeah,
whole, how much money you'd make, fortune, like.
yeah.
But I mean, it'll never happen because there's because it's illegal, because you'll never get a license to grow THC stuff, THC rich cannabis. But what it is possible, what it might be possible to do if there's a demand out there. I mean, as you're saying, is that most of the patients want THC, they want at least 1% or more. And if there, I can't, there's no way that I can start a business, that I could have come up with a
But
business proposal
is there not enough CBD on the market
that
currently? Is the market not flooded with CBD currently?
well, yeah, but I don't know. I mean, eventually I'm going to talk to hemp retailers, and I don't know. I would love to be able to ask them, well, where do you get your cannabis? That at the
Yeah.
moment, I mean, I'm not going to do that. If there's any hemp retailers watching, I'm not going to ask you stupid questions that you don't want asked. So like, but I would like to get an idea for what I would also be asking them.
Italy seems like the most common place that the cannabis or the CBD flowers in Ireland is coming from anyway. That I've heard of from some of the retailers of CBD. It seems like Italy is the most common place. Yeah, where the suppliers here have maybe farms out there or are contracted for them. Something along those lines. And because Italy allow like better strains to be grown over there, and they've obviously got a better climate for it as well.
Yeah, they have the climate for. I mean, I've often thought it would be, if we legalize cannabis, we should be all importing it from Morocco. Like, I mean, those guys have been growing it for 1,000 years, like, or more, and they produce the most gorgeous hashish that, I mean,
Yeah,
I
that
smoke.
is something, all right. Yeah, Morocco,
I mean,
Lebanon.
I
Yeah,
didn't
there's a
realize
couple of
for years.
regions there.
Sorry?
No, Morocco, the Lebanon. There's a couple of regions that come to mind that are like well known for cannabis. Like even Jamaica would be another
The
one.
climate
Like over the years that they've always been attributed to it. But like really logistically, when we look at it, is it not best to kind of have it produced here if it's like we look at
like
Ireland
local brewery,
really.
yeah. I mean, like
Like
your local brewery, you could have your local cannabis grower and your local who sells it, goes down to the who might have his own shop down, or she, excuse my sexism, I was brought up in the 60s
yeah.
before. But anyway, all excuses aside,
Yeah.
I mean, you could have locally grown like a microbreweries and things like that. I mean, if that doesn't happen, there's like people, I'm sure, like yourself, who are very wary of the corporate takeover of cannabis that in Ireland, like happened in Canada, you know, that who make it all balls. I mean, they had a great idea, and they thought, you know, they go the extra mile and turn it into, go from completely illegal to corporate America,
Yeah.
instead of going
Well, we've
steps
that
in
currently
Europe.
going on with like CBD. Yeah, like you've a lot of people getting involved. Like, excuse me, you've a lot of people getting involved in the CBD industry, and they won't even
Huge.
talk about cannabis at all. They won't mention cannabis. They'll only talk about CBD. They'll talk about hemp, but they won't
Yeah,
even mention the word cannabis. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
shout out to Little Collins. Like, in fairness to them, that they've kind of stepped up their game there in recent months, and they're really challenging the government here. But there's other companies out there, and they're just jumping on the bloody bandwagon. I even talked about a herbalist there in a recent interview I don't know, was it with Natalie? But basically, like she started holding CBD courses
Oh, lovely. Yeah,
about a week or so after telling me how about a month or two actually after completely disregarding my question I had towards her on cannabis. Like she just like literally hopped on the bandwagon.
It just
Um,
goes to how quickly things can happen. Like, I mean, as Natalie said during that interview, once the stigma is taken away, once people don't feel justified anymore in
And how can you respect those people after that, though? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, you know
did
what
you
it is?
know?
It's like a racist all of a sudden turning around and being, you know, so now the racism is totally outlawed, or
Yeah, I don't know,
that
though. Like,
they're now
it's
friends with color people. Like, you know, I mean, I mean, I just
we've
heard.
so many people within our own community who don't want to speak out for fear of being targeted. like, I don't know, like, but to think about it, like, if you're walking down the road and you're in a group of people and one of you gets attacked or something, and like, you don't want to speak out in case you get attacked then as well. Like, is that really good as a group of people? If we all spoke out together, then there's no fear of us all being attacked. But if it's like one person gets attacked and only one person speaks out in support of that person, then yeah, of course that person isn't more vulnerable to being attacked. But if there's 100 people speaking out, like, you know, this is what's been missing in our movement, is we're not fucking united. Like, we're so divided. Like, you see so many cases go in and out of the court case, and there's nobody there supporting them. Like, well, where, like, why am, what's wrong with me? Is there something wrong with me, like, that I can't just accept that my crime was a crime and just accept my punishment and get on with it? Why am I challenging it? Like, why isn't there more people like me?
Well, I mean, because
or yourself, like, John?
it's been 60 years. We've been brought up with it. I'll never forget when I was a flipping 10-year-old watching this program during the. I won't tell you about it because you won't believe me, because you won't believe the programs I were made. But I mean, long story short, I was absolutely, as a 10-year-old, against drugs. Drugs were off dirty something. I don't know what it was. There was just something wrong with drugs. I mean,
Yeah.
drug dealers on the cop shows. I mean, we're just brought up with it, and to go from that to saying, hold on a second, this is not to try to tell a person who's brought up like that, who's been lied to their whole entire lives, that they're, you know, that about drugs are bad, and to find out, no, they're not. They're the most fantastic therapeutic tool blooming that we've nearly ever found. These people with all these terrible ailments, like, but
That's right.
I don't think that it's too big a leap for many people, and it has such. I mean, even the word narcotic, I mean, all that means is sleep inducing. I mean, if you ask yourself, any person, you stopped anyone with your clipboard, walked down the street, and you said the word narcotic, is that is that good or a bad thing? They'd immediately, oh, narcotics, you know what I mean? There's a narcotics division, and, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, narcotic is a brilliant thing. I mean, geez,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, if you ever had to do it without sleep for a couple of nights, if
Fucking
you, I
love a
mean,
narcotic then,
I
wouldn't
get it
you?
now and again. I get a bit of insomnia, and I just can't
Yeah.
sleep and have to get up. And I
No,
mean,
you're dead right, man. Yeah.
it's brutal. But I mean, so I mean, we've been brainwashed. I mean, I think
Yeah, we
most of us,
have,
you know, I mean, for
definitely.
our whole lives, you know, like, I
Yeah.
mean, and to, you know, there's a bit of all cognitive dissonance there. I mean, if you've been to go, I mean, if you present someone with an argument that is, which is, goes against their belief system, they will go to any kind of lengths to support their belief system before they, you know, it's like, I might have said this before, like, I mean, that it's like trying to tell someone who's afraid of dogs that, you know, logically that canine is less than 20 centimeters tall, its teeth are only this size, you know, they're less than 2 millimeters, it probably won't even bite through your clothes. I
Yeah.
mean, even if it did, it wouldn't, you know, and plus this dog has never ever attacked anybody ever in its entire life. I mean, the person who's afraid of dogs, who's had to, you know,
Still going to behave like
eh,
it's T-Rex.
no, no logical argument you can make. You know, you
Yeah.
just slowly acclimatize them to it. So I mean, like a
Yeah.
spider or something. So I think that's part of with COVID-19. You know, I mean, I was thinking it'd be a great idea if you could if you were able to call around to people who were interested in smoking cannabis and trying to see what it was like. You know, that would be great to surreptitiously, if you could do that without, you know, I mean, it'd be a great way to let people know. I mean, they'd pass on the information that they, you know, but I mean,
Yeah.
as I said, with all the stigma attached to it over the last 60 years since the UN Convention in 1961, and the 60 years since then, there's so much stigma attached to it that people like, people just don't want to be associated. I mean, I remember years ago, there was this guy telling me, he was on some program like the Joe Duffy show, and he was talking about he was a cabbie in, I think it was Derry, and there was this girl got into the back of his car, and she started giving him crap, and she then tossed up her hair and tore her clothes and said, I'm going to report you tried to rape me. And what she didn't know is that he had a tape recorder in his top pocket and pressed the record button. So that, I mean, she went he said, okay, drove her off to the police station, and then the policeman came out and said, have you anything to say before I arrest you? And he said, hold on a second, before you do that, do you mind listening to that there? I recorded the whole thing. And he listened to it and he said, do you want to put any charges against this person? And he said, no, because if I do, what will happen is that 6 months down the line, when this is all over, all people are going to remember is that he was involved in a sex case. and they don't, you know, I mean, the details of what went on will be from, and so I think cannabis is like that in the sense that if someone gets, even if the Gardaí are at their house over drugs or over cannabis, that they're immediately, people are going to be wary of him. You know, there's
definitely,
goes along with that you're
my God,
then,
what are neighbours thinking?
well, you're open season then for the Gardaí. Like, I mean, people don't realize it like that. You know, I mean, that time that I got stopped in a couple of days after Christmas Day, there was a guy in the back of the car who was obviously pissed off after being kicked out of the drug squad. He was in the drug squad, which is a great, you can carry on a flipping gun when you're in the drug squad, like, you know. So
Right.
a lot of men like that kind of thing, you know, to be honest. And he was there in the back of a van, and, you know, I mean, I don't know why he wasn't a very nice guy, you know what I mean? But at the same time, he was pissed off, and he said, hey, I could see him pointing at me when they were coming down the road. I mean, he obviously said to them like that, this is the person who might have, you know, we'd stopped him for cannabis, or we got him for cannabis one time, and, you know, so like if you're known to, you know, I mean, this infamous expression, you hear it on the news every night, known to the Gardaí, you know, I mean, if you're known to the Gardaí, you know, that's it's a black mark against you, you know,
It is,
socially wise. So
even in court.
listen, I'm really talking. I mean, I don't want to be
Oh no,
your
you're dead right, John. Definitely. I think that's a good point to be closing on there, almost at that point. But last final shout out just again to the Cannabis Activist Alliance. Just if people want to get involved with them, it's Cannabis Activist Alliance on Facebook. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this year there's the bill there. There's a possibility.
Yeah.
I was said zero at the start, but I mean, I think your optimism is rubbing off. I mean, could the Greens be turned around? Could the rest of the people there say, hold on a second, you know, medicinal cannabis? I mean, like I was saying earlier, I mean, you need a major big impact. One major big impact. If there's people out there that are only just casually involved in activism or casually involved in supporting activism, and they're only, you know, wouldn't really think about it. If you're following the medicinal cannabis stories, what the real life experiences of people that need cannabis, not like myself, I lost 100 grams and boohoo, you know, I mean,
fair enough.
You know, I mean, but
You're
compared to somebody who needs it, who has a fucking terrible need for it. And I mean, if you familiarize yourself with only just a few of those stories, unless you're a sucker for punishment, that's all you'll probably be able to take. Then this is a great opportunity. I mean, take the gloves off or come out of the closet, you know, come out of the closet. And I mean, you're talking about, it's online, Cannabis Activist Alliance. It's a private group. I mean, if you search for it, you won't find it. You have to be invited. So if you know Martin there, get in touch with him.
Yep, drop me a DM. I'll sort them out.
Yeah, he'll be able to invite you to go, because this is a private page. There's no one on that play. I mean, otherwise the Gardaí have free reign to monitor whoever's saying what. Like, this is a private thing, and well, so as far as I know, there's no Gardaí have been invited in it.
As far as we know.
I mean, that you take a look at who's members, and I think you'd be fairly happy that.
Well, look, let's not fair get in the way of this. Like, that, don't be fearful. Like, even if the Gardaí are in there, just don't be fearful. Like, well, what are we actually doing? Like, we're not actually setting up a drug dealing facility or anything like that. We're setting up a people's movement, that's seeking to end the prohibition, that's going to do away with this sort of thing. That's like, currently our Gardaí are going on fucking Snapchatting out to target drug dealers. In fairness, there's rapists and murderers out there, and our Gardaí are out there on Snapchat trying to find a bloody 17-year-old who's selling bloody cannabis jellies. Come on, in fairness, so get out there, join the Cannabis Activist Alliance and fight for this fucking bill.
There's all kinds of reasons, but I mean, one major good reason, I mean, I'm focused on a section of the medicinal cannabis community that I think I can help. It'd be great if I could do with something else, but like, this is something, if you're not involved in the Activist Alliance, most years you can say, well, there's nothing happening. You know, they're going to have a 420, they might have a few marches. There's a bill happening this year, it could happen. There's a chance. I mean, most years there's no bloody, forget about it.
We didn't have that in the last 7 years. It was 2013 was the last bill.
Well, so I mean, I mean, if you want to come out of the closet and take the take the chance. I mean, as I said, Cannabis Activist Alliance is a private group, so you're very well protected there anyway. Your advice, your opinions, your contacts, somebody, like I was saying, if you knew a solicitor, or if you are a solicitor, or not any other ways. I mean, if you're involved in the hemp community and you also support this, then you, the Cannabis Activist Alliance, and there's things that, I mean, it doesn't have to just be the medicinal cannabis bill. There could be things happening in the hemp world that you're involved in, that a group there could, well, they might, there are people that are meeting every week. So, I mean, I don't know how often the other groups that you're involved in the hemp world are meeting. So this is a chance to put your views forward.
Tuesday nights again, isn't it? At Tuesday at 9, they meet on Zoom, or I think they've switched platforms. But look, get in touch with me anyway if you want an invite. And John, thanks very much again for taking the time out this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. We aim for an hour, but look, we've gone over only by maybe 30-40 minutes, sure. And there you go, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with John O Regan of the Cannabis Activist Alliance, and hopefully someday Ireland's Cannabis Party. I know John has the court cases coming up in February and April, so I will certainly stay in close communications with him as we get closer to those dates, and I'll report back to you here if there is any updates with them. So again, thanks very much to John O Regan. And guys, if you do want to get involved in that Cannabis Activist Alliance, don't hesitate to get in touch, and I will make sure that you get invited into that group. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to today's episode of Martin's World. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay blazed out there, guys, and keep our lit.